Hello and welcome to my tutorial on how to install WebODM using Docker. Not only will we be installing Docker and WebODM and using it, but I will show you how to get the maps onto a mobile device such as an iPad or iPhone so you can see your location on the map in real time in the field, because if you couldn't do that, the maps would just be pretty things to look at on your computer. Anyways, so some reasons you might want to use WebODM. You might want to make some cool maps like this or this or this. Now I'm a farmer, so these are pictures of our fields or maps of our fields, and all these white lines here are tile lines. So we like to use it. We get these maps on our iPad, and then we can walk out here and we can mark all these tile lines so we can add tile or fix tile or whatever. Now I'm sure you have your own purpose for it, but that's what we use it for, and so far it works absolutely fantastic. Now, another reason you might want to use WebODM is because you have things like Joan Deploy, which are $1,200 a year or $150 a month to do something that a free program could do. So there's that. Okay, before we get into installing WebODM, let's talk about specs. So I will put this in the description. It shows that in order to run it, you need 100 gigabytes of free disk space and 16 gigabytes of RAM. You could probably get by with less, but only if you're doing small maps. Like, let's say you're running a construction site and you're doing a map of your construction site, and it's 20 to 40 images. You could probably get by with 8 gigabytes of RAM, maybe even 6 or 4, and 50 gigabytes of free disk space, depending on what you want to do with the maps. But I would definitely not recommend having less than 16 gigabytes of RAM. And if you're doing large maps, you probably want more than 100 gigabytes of free disk space. In fact, in my computer here, I have a second hard drive, 500 gigabyte hard drive that I have dedicated just to making maps. And even here it says don't expect to process more than a few hundred images with these specifications. To process larger data sets, add more RAM, which is important. Also, you need at least a quad-core CPU because the maps take at least 2, a minimum of 2, and Windows needs a minimum of 2 to run. So you need at least 4 cores. I'll show you guys how to figure out how many cores you have later. But as far as operating systems go, I'm going to show you guys how to download this on Windows 10 Pro. You can download it on Windows 10 Home. I'm talking about 64-bit operating systems here. You can download on Windows 10 Home, but it is different, and I'll explain that a little bit later too. I'm not going to show you guys how to do it in Windows 10 Home. I tried it once, I couldn't get it to work, got super frustrated. I then upgraded to Windows 10 Pro, and I got it to work much better. You can download it on Mac and Linux. If you're trying to download it on Linux, you probably already know more about it than I do, so I'm not going to go there. In Macs, I'm not a fan of Macs. I think a $500 Windows computer is equal to a $2,000 Mac. But you can download them on Macs. But frankly, Macs just aren't that good spec computers for how much they charge. Unless you have like the new $30,000 Mac, it's gonna be really hard to do much. I could be wrong. Maybe you're using a Mac. Mac Mini, you're doing tons of maps. I don't know. But I'm going to show you guys how to do it on Windows. You can yell at me for not liking Macs if you want. That's fine. But, yeah, so I'll show you guys how to figure out your specs on a Windows machine. So, that's not what you do. What am I doing? So you go down here and you hit this File button. And if for some reason you don't have this File button, you can hit the search bar and hit File Explorer here. And then right-click on this PC and hit Properties. So here you can see I'm running Windows 10 Pro. That's how you figure out whether you have Windows 10 Pro or Home. It has to be 64-bit, which is showing right here. And here's your CPU and RAM. Now it actually does not show how many cores your CPU has here. I'll show you guys how to do that in a little bit. But here you can see how much RAM you have. As you can see, I have 56 gigabytes of RAM. I've only ever had one map that wasn't enough RAM for, but I was able to turn down the settings and get it to squeeze by with 56 gigabytes. So in order to figure out how many cores your CPU has, you hit Control-Alt-Delete on your keyboard, then hit Task Manager, and then you click on the Performance tab. Now, if this didn't pop up and it popped up like this, you have more details, performance, and here it'll show you how many cores and logical processors you have. Now, technically, you could probably get by with a 2-core processor if you have 4 logical processors, but I would recommend at least a quad-core. As you can see, I have a 6-core 12-thread processor here. And now something else that is super important with making this work is you need to have virtualization enabled. That's because WebODM runs on a virtual machine called Docker. Now, if virtualization is not enabled, you will have to enable it. In order to do that, you need to go into your computer's BIOS and enable it. I'm not going to get into that because every computer is vastly different on how that is done. So if you have no idea how to do that, Google is your friend to say how to enable virtualization on and whatever model of your computer you have. Okay, now that we have talked about the specs and operating systems, let's get into actually installing WebODM and using it. So, I'll close this. So I will link everything in the description with labels of what each one is. So the first one that we're going to need is this page right here. So you open it up, it'll look like this. You scroll down. There's a bunch of cool information here on all the different types of maps that you can make. You can make some super cool stuff that I definitely don't know how to do. But that's something you can play around with later. You scroll down, and in the getting started thing here, it tells you what you need to know. So it says install the following applications if they're not installed already. This is a lie. You don't need all these applications. You definitely do not need pip or Python. In fact, they got rid of the links for those. And you do not need Docker Compose. I've never used Docker Compose, and I've had it work perfectly fine for me in the past. And here's where it says that if you have Windows 10 Home, you have to use Docker Toolbox rather than Docker for Windows, which is for Windows 10 Pro. Like I said earlier, I tried with Windows 10 Home earlier to download Docker Toolbox, and I could not get it to work. So I'm using Docker for Windows 10 Pro. So the two things that you do need to install are Docker and Git. I'll install Git first, super easy. You click on a link there, you click on Windows, and it starts downloading. Cool. Next, you need to download Docker. So you click on the link here, you hover over products, and you hit Docker Desktop. Now you can install Docker for Windows Stable right here, and it will install the latest version. However, I have had a lot of issues with the past couple versions. It seems like some older versions work a lot better for me. So I'll link this in the description too. Here is the latest version, but you can also download some earlier versions. I have had a lot of issues with these two. So I'm going to go ahead and download Docker Desktop Community 2.2.0.5 because that is what works for my computer. Now, like I said, your computer might work perfectly fine with the newer version. However, I have a really old workstation here, and it works a lot better with the older version. So I'm going to go ahead and download this one. However, once you download the versions, setting up is about the same or basically identical. So either way, whatever you decide to do should work either way. Okay, so my Git has finished downloading. I'm going to click on that. It'll pop up, hit yes, next, next. Now you guys will not get this more than likely. I have had this downloaded in the past, so that's why that's popping up. I'm just gonna hit yes. Next, 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 next. Install. Okay, once it finishes installing, you can view the release notes if you want. I just click off it, hit next, and now I'm gonna wait for Docker Desktop to download. Okay, Docker has finished downloading. Click on that little thing down there. It'll take a second to open. Maybe 2 or 3. There we go. Hit yes. Downloading package. Enable required Windows features. Yes. Add shortcut to desktop. Yes. Use Windows containers instead of Linux containers. Now you're thinking maybe since I'm on Windows I should click this. Don't. You want to use Linux containers. Hit OK. and it'll unpack the files. This will take a little bit, so I'll catch you afterwards. Okay, well, it finished installing. I hit the close button. Now, an important thing is, if you're using this computer for something other than making drone maps, you're going to want to disable Docker Desktop on startup. That's because Docker Desktop takes a lot of resources, and if every time you start your computer, Docker Desktop starts up, it's going to diminish the performance and everything else you do. However, if you're using this computer for maps only, like I do, you can leave it enabled, but I'll show you guys how to disable it if you're using your computer for something else. So, once again, you hit Control-Alt-Delete, hit on Task Manager. This time, instead of hitting Performance, you hit Startup, Docker Desktop, and see on Startup it is enabled, and you just got to hit the Disable button, and it will disable it. However, I only use this computer for drone maps, so I'll keep mine enabled. There we go. Okay, so now in order to use Docker Desktop, you double click on the icon, and a little thing should pop over here that Docker Desktop is starting. And see this little whale right here? The little boxes are going up and down. Once the boxes stop going up and down and they're just solid, that means it has started. This will take a little bit, so I'll catch up to you guys when it's done. Okay, well, it has started. The newer versions, I think it does something a little bit different, but it's going to ask you to log in your Docker ID. If you don't have a Docker ID, you can create one. I already have one, so I'm going to log in, but never mind, because it's not going to let me. Oh, there we go. So I'm going to log in, and then I don't want you guys to see my password and username, obviously. I'll catch up with you guys right after. So from here on out, it's basically the same whether you're on the new version of Docker or if you're on the version of Docker that I'm on. So what you do is if Docker isn't showing up down here, you hit this little button, and then you right-click on the Docker icon and hit Settings. And after it loads for a second, this screen will pop up. Start Docker with desktop. I'm going to just click that. There we go. Okay. Also, I don't want to check for updates because the new ones don't work for me. So then you go to Resources. Now here is how you allocate how much your computer is dedicated to making drone maps. Now since this computer does nothing other than making drone maps, normally I put 9 of my 12 cores on there, or threads technically. And then since I have 56 gigabytes of memory, I usually dedicate, I would never recommend going all the way to the end. I would back off a little bit. So I would put like 52. And then your disk image size. So 64 gigabytes, that's probably enough to make one map. But I have that dedicated hard drive, so I'm going to browse for a different spot. Now, don't mind me here. So I have this hard drive right here dedicated just for making maps. So I'm going to click on that and select folder. If you have a specific spot you want all these maps made, you can hit documents or pictures or whatever. But I'm going to put mine on my hard drive. There we go. And then I'm going to dedicate 465.7 gigabytes. Now for the sake of this video, I'm actually not going to do this many cores. I'm just going to do 2. And I'll do 16 gigabytes RAM because I have no idea how much you guys have. So I'll just be modest. Apply and restart. Now it's going to take Docker a little bit to restart, so just be patient with it, and I'll catch up with you guys when it's done. Okay, so it has restarted. I'm going to hit the little X. Oh, no, don't want to do that. Okay, so next, go back to this web page, not this one, or this one. This one, the one I linked in the description. And now you're going to be following these instructions in a little bit, but first you need to hit your search bar, search for Git, which you downloaded earlier, open that up. Now this looks complicated, but it's really easy. Let me show you how to do it. So right here, from the Docker Quick Start Terminal or Git Bash or the command line, type this. So what I do, and it's super easy, I select the first line of code, copy, paste, enter. And then it does its thing. Okay, once it finishes that one, I copy the second line of code, paste. Then I copy this third line code and paste and hit enter. Now this one is going to take a fair amount of time. So just, walk away, go get a sandwich, I guess. Let it do its thing, and I'll come back when it's done. Okay, so once that finishes, we can find this link right here. Not really a link, but you copy this, and you go to your web browser. Google Chrome is what I found works the best for me. And you paste it in, and you hit enter. And then it'll ask you to enter your username and your password again. So when you first start, it will have a project 1 thing here. You just click edit and delete. Then you create your own project. So I'll add a project. I'll call it test. Create project. Now you gotta select your images. So I'm gonna go to wherever your images are. That you go there. I'm gonna go. Mine's called unprocessed maps. Now let me think. What's the smallest one? I think it's this one. All right. So now, if you use Joan Deploy to take the images, and there's tons of videos on that, you can watch that on YouTube. But as you can see, I start on image 2. That's because when the drone takes off, it takes an image of where it takes off and of the horizon and everything. If you get that picture of the horizon along with all these pictures pointing straight down, it will screw it up big time. So, however many times your drone took off to take these pictures is how many times that image is going to be in there. So, let's say you had a 4 battery map and your drone took off 4 times, you got to scroll through your images and find that picture all 4 times. I already deleted mine, so as you can see I started image 2, and this is only a 1 battery map. So I'm just going to select all my images and hit open. Okay, so now it brings up all these options. And now here, I showed you earlier, here, with all these options is how you make all these cool maps. Now, I don't need any of these cool maps. I just need a 2D map that's georeferenceable so that I can put it on my phone and I can see myself in real time on the map. So I'm just going to go to options and hit fast ortho. If you want to do anything else, you hit the edit button, and there's all these options in here for what you want to do. But for what I like to do, fast ortho works fine. Resize images, I say yes, and hit review. And then start processing. So now first thing it's going to do is upload all your images. Just wait for that to be done, and it'll go to the next step. Okay, now it's running. This will take a while depending on your maps. I've had maps take up to 24 hours on my big ones. If you want to make sure that it's still running, because sometimes, every once in a while, it is a free software, a map will stop in the middle, and then you have to delete it and restart the computer. But just to make sure it's still running, how I do it is I hit the plus button there, and I turn task output on. And here, it tells you, what's going on as they're being done. So, let's say it's stuck on one for a couple hours, and you're not for sure whether it's moving or not. What you can do is you can highlight the bottom one, and then if a new task happens, obviously it'll just take over. So let's say you check it at noon and it's here. You highlight it and you come back 5 hours later, and now there's stuff underneath it. That means that it's still moving. So this will take a while, and obviously I'm not going to sit here and talk for the next 4 or 5 hours. So I'll see you later. Okay, so my map has completed. It actually went a lot faster than I thought it was going to. It only took 1 hour and 8 minutes. So if you had a 3D model, you can view the 3D model here. You can also view the map. It kind of goes to Google Maps. It's not actually Google Maps, but it kind of creates a Google Maps thing. You can see it as an overlay over satellite pictures. But I'm not going to do that because I want to view it on my phone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to download assets. And the only one that I need is the GeoTIFF. So I'm going to download the GeoTIFF. And then now you got to find a way to get this to your device. So I'm going to use an iPhone. So the best way that I've found is to put it on a cloud service. So OneDrive or Dropbox or Google Drive. So that way you can access it from your phone very easily. Okay, now I'm on my iPhone, and I'm going to show you guys the app that I use to look at my drone maps on my phone. So it's the bottom one in the center called Avenza Maps. I do not know if it's built for Android devices. I don't have any Android devices. It probably is. Whether it acts the same or not, I don't know. But if you have an iPhone or iPad, use Avenza Maps. So I'll click on it here. It's a free app, and it lets you have up to 3 maps at a time on the free version. And if you want to pay for the other version to get as many maps as you want, you can. I don't remember how much it is, but I never need more than 3 maps at a time. In fact, I only have 1 on there right now. So you hit the plus button, and then you go to from storage locations, or if you have iTunes file sharing or Dropbox, click on that. But I'm gonna go from storage locations. Here I can get it from iCloud Drive, Google Drive, OneDrive. Okay, now once you find the folder that your map is in, it will load the files. And it will only, so here I have a PNG and a TIFF file. It will only let you click on the TIFF file. So click on the TIFF file, it'll start loading it. Okay, now that it is done downloading, it processes the map on the main screen. Okay, now that it's done processing the map, I can click on it and it will load the map. Now, I'm sitting in my house right now, so it won't show my location, but if I were to drive out to the field, it would show my location as a little blue dot on the map. Now, that's pretty cool. I can walk around and I can even draw and measure, record GPS tracks, navigate to destinations, find coordinates, and all this cool stuff. So this way you can actually use your drone maps in real time on location.